Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so that you know when live we go. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's Indian Express Explained session. The idea here is to discuss news that has not been elaborately covered already in the DNS. So we choose topic in the Express Explained section so that it does not overlap with the DNS. Considering that the topic that we have chosen for the discussion are there on your screen and the time stamping for the same is in the description section. We will begin with this important explained article with the title Countries that Allow Gender Self Identification and the Law in India. This article has been written in the context of the news that the Equality Ministry of Spain has recently announced that the government of Spain has given approval to the first draft of a bill that would allow anyone over the age of 14 to legally change gender without a medical diagnosis or hormone therapy. Legally change gender without any medical model, meaning they are going to give to the citizens right to self-determination of their gender. Self-identification is a concept that a person should be allowed to legally identify the gender of his or her choice by simply declaring so, without any medical model, without any medical test. This issue of self identification has been very decisive in the debates all over the world. Even in Europe, considered to be a very liberal society is divided on this issue. The division is not only based on liberal and conservative line of thoughts, but there are variants in thinking even among the LGBTQ community. The gay rights group does not want this. Their fear is the teenagers gay. They may be told that they are actually trans person. So hormone therapy and surgery may be encouraged. Obviously, the gay right group will not want the teenage gays to become trans. Then there are problems with feminist groups. Feminist group does not want trans people to become females because that will take away the rights given exclusively to women. In fact, in Germany, a bill on the similar line as has been brought in Spain was brought, but it was defeated. The common argument for not giving right to self-determination is the pretext of it being misused. There are chances that people who genuinely does not feel themselves internally to be female, they may be declaring so, leading to cases of fraud. Then there are variants in thinking or opposition on religious ground. The present conservative government in Hungary has recently adopted a law effectively banning all content about homosexuality and gender change from the school curriculum, also on television shows that are made for children under the age of 18 years. Presently, there is conservative government in Hungary and they are adopting religious hardlines. But the president of Spain, while not giving in to the pressure of feminist groups, has said that there is a need to safeguard the balance of women's right and of people as punished as trans people, and of a group as punished as the trans people. No doubt transgenders are one of the most marginalized group in any society. We will take our focus now to the status of right to self-determination in India. Concerning right to self-determination, there have been two landmark judgments that you have to know thoroughly. One is famously called as the Nalsa judgment, and the other is Nafte Johar versus Union of India judgment. In these two judgments, Supreme Court has made grand declaration for equal rights for transgender and intersex people. In the Nalsa judgment, Supreme Court expanded the notion of sex. The term sex under the Constitution was made to include gender as well. Discrimination on the ground of sex under Article 1516, therefore, will include discrimination on ground of gender identity as well. The court very strongly and conclusively established that both gender and biological attributes constitute distinct components of sex. While biological characteristics would include genitals, your chromosomes, secondary sexual features, etc., gender would include one's self image and the deep psychological or emotional sense of one's gender identity and character. The court laid stress on the gender identity in the overall personality. And you understand later on, this will be linked to right of life, our very existence. The court said that the right to gender identity is inherent in one's right to life, right to autonomy, right to dignity. This judgment laid the foundation for Navteej Johar case. In the Nalsa judgment, Supreme Court already made this observation that gender identity forms the core of one's personal self, and it has to be based on self-determination rather than any surgical or medical procedure. Observe this very carefully to make the connection well. Observe this very carefully how the rights are being connected and constructed by Supreme Court. In the Nalsa judgment, court said that one's gender expression, the gender identity, has been linked to gender expression. This gender expression will also be protected under Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution, as it reflects the innate character and identity of people. Supreme Court alluded to values of privacy. Right to privacy was not talked about, but values of privacy, self-identity, autonomy, and personal integrity are fundamental rights guaranteed to transgender person under Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution. Right to freedom of expression was linked to gender expression in the Nalsa judgment. And the Nalsa judgment laid the foundation for Navteej Johar versus Union of India judgment. This is also famously called as Navteej judgment. Here, Supreme Court made a very important linking of right to life with right to bodily integrity. Supreme Court laid the foundation for a form of equality model in our society. This equality model embraces gender variance. Gender variance can be embraced only when right to self determination of gender identity is affirmed by individuals themselves, and it is linked with right to life with dignity and the recognition of one's right to bodily integrity. In Navteej Johar versus Union of India, right to life was directly linked with right to bodily integrity. Privacy will be directly unequivocally declared as fundamental right. So far, the Supreme Court considered privacy as value. But when privacy will be declared as fundamental right, privacy will be linked with right to bodily integrity. And right to bodily integrity already has been linked with right to life in Navteej Johar case. In the Navteej Johar case, Supreme Court relied on the self-identification of gender identity as reflected in Yogyakarta principle. Yogyakarta principle upholds the principle of right to recognition before the law, meaning each person's self-defined sexual orientation and gender identity is integral to their personality and is one of the most basic aspects of self-determination, dignity and freedom. The principle also says that no one will be forced to undergo medical procedure, including sex reassignment surgery or sterilization or any hormone therapy, as a requirement for legal recognition of their gender identity. So, this principle of self determination was made the core part of the judgment, the core aspect of one's identity. Supreme Court said that realization of one's own abilities, visualizing the opportunities, and rejection of external views with a clear conscience that is in accord with the constitutional norms and values or principles is constitutionally permissible. As long as it is lawful, one is entitled to determine and follow his or her pattern of life. The court stressed on the right to bodily integrity, and court also went further to say that this right under Article 21 of the Constitution has been elaborated include the right to refuse participation in any medical treatment or method, not just related to gender identity. Later, in Selvi versus the state of Karnataka, the Supreme Court held that compelling a person to undergo a narco-analysis test with or without consent would amount to violation of one's right to privacy and bodily integrity. Then the issue came to its natural conclusion in the Puttaswamy versus Union of India judgment, also called as Puttaswamy judgment or the privacy judgment. Here the Supreme Court affirmed that the right to bodily integrity is an incident of one's privacy. And privacy was declared as the fundamental right. Right to bodily integrity would become part of privacy and the fundamental right. The court held that the privacy of the body entitles an individual to the integrity of the physical aspect of a personhood. That the intersection between one's mental integrity and privacy entitles the individual to freedom of thought, the freedom of belief, the freedom to believe what is right, the freedom of self determination. And these things are crucial to gender identity. So the privacy of the individual in this way inviolably recognizes the right to determine how their freedom shall be exercised and the right to determine their personhood and their implying the right to determine their personhood, the right to determine their gender. So it is amply clear that from these three judgments, from the Nalsa judgment, from the Navtej Johar judgment, and from the Puttaswamy judgment, the court has made it unequivocally clear that Indian citizens have the right to self determination in recognizing and declaring their gender identity, and they must not be subjected to any medical conditioning, any surgery, any hormone therapy for identification or modification of gender, and neither so for getting benefit from any government schemes. Apart from the Supreme Court judgment, let's talk about legislation related to the safeguard of rights of transgender and intersex people. The law is called as Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2019. This law originally was based on the medical model of gender identity recognition. It did not as such recognize the right to self-determination. Section 6 of this legislation, although allowed any person to receive a certificate of identity only as a transgender person. And for such certificate of identity, you did not require any medical examination. But the following section, section 7, stated that if a transgender person wishes to change their identity to male or female and then undergo a surgery, then gender recognition can only be granted after producing a medical certificate to show the same. Meaning, if you want to declare yourself as a transgender person, you will get a certificate for the same, and that will require no medical examination. But if you want to declare yourself as a male or a female after going a surgery, then you have to produce that medical certificate. You cannot self declare your gender as a male or female. This provision in the legislation of 2019 was severely criticized because right from the Nalsa judgment, right from 2014 when the Nalsa judgment came, the entire nation was moving in the direction of right to self determination of their gender identity. But this legislation kind of reversed it. It negated the core principle that a person has the right to self determination of their gender identity. And that gender identity could be anything, male or female or a third gender. After severe criticism, when the rules for the law was finalized in 2020, the final rules did not have this provision. The final rule read like this regarding the grant of gender identity certification. It said that the district magistrate will, subject to the correctness of the applicant's particulars, get the application processed based on the affidavit submitted, declaring the gender of identity of any person. It does not require medical certificate anymore. Based on affidavit without any medical or physical examination. So, do we have the right to self determination of gender identity in India? Yes. And has that remarkably improved the status of LGBT community? No. There is always gap between law and the ground reality. We shall discuss this explained article how COVID-19 has impacted household savings, deposits and debt. Recently, RBI has published the preliminary estimate. We shall discuss this explained article how COVID-19 has impacted household. In this regard, this article basically analyzes the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on financial savings of the households. The gross saving is mainly contributed by three sectors: public, private corporate, and the household sector. There has been decline in the gross saving, as you can see, from the year 2011-12 to the current times, and it has been declining, but you cannot say that it is consistently declining, but it is gradually declining. For the year 2019-20, the gross saving declined to around 30.9%, and this decline is largely because of the decline in the gross saving of household sector. As you can see from this chart, the household sector is the major contributor for gross saving of Indian economy. This is followed by the private corporates. You can also observe from this chart, in India, average household holds major chunk of its saving in physical assets. Assets like real estate, durable goods such as transportation vehicles, livestock, agricultural machinery, non-farm business equipments, that kind of physical assets. So in household sector, physical saving is more than the financial saving. Net financial saving will also take into account financial liabilities. Financial liabilities are primarily held in the form of loans and borrowing from the banks or other NBFCs. Among NBFCs, non-banking financial companies, the major contribution for the liabilities come from housing finance companies. But in contrast to Indian economy, in the developed economies, household holds substantial portion of their wealth in financial assets. The financial asset penetration in India is quite low. Household savings basically can be categorized as financial saving, physical saving. The net financial saving is calculated as financial asset minus financial liabilities. The financial asset, this includes currency, the bank deposits, debt securities, mutual funds. That is a major contributor to the asset. Other major financial assets are insurance, pension funds, and also the small savings. Financial liabilities are the loans and the borrowings. Physical savings, as we have talked about, they include physical assets. Now we are interested in talking a little bit about financial saving. Financial saving will include currency with the household, the deposits of households, investment of households in shares and debentures, claims on governments in the form of subsidies, scholarships, etc., insurance funds, and provident and pension funds. May I bring your attention to this one important entry here of deposits? The contribution of deposit in the financial saving data is 4.2%. Out of 11%, 4.2% came from deposit in the financial year 1920. Also take note of financial liabilities data. It was 3.2% of GNDI, gross national disposable income. What you should remember from this slide are these three things. Gross financial saving hovers around 11% since a long time. Deposits as percentage of GNDI is around 4%, and the financial liabilities around 3%. Now let's talk about the recent trend in financial savings of households. First of all, several studies have shown that households tend to save more during slowdown and income uncertainty. And the present economic slowdown has led to higher uncertainty for the households. Hence, the households have refrained from borrowing. Borrowings from the bank, the loans has decreased. And that has contracted the financial liability. And this decrease in the financial liability has led to increase in the net financial saving of the household. Remember, saving is equal to financial asset minus financial liability. If financial liability will decrease, the saving will increase. Now pay attention for your prelims exam. In the first quarter of preceding financial year, the net financial saving shooted up to 21% of the GDP. And according to RBI's preliminary estimate, household saving has already tempered down to around 8.2% of GDP in the third quarter of preceding financial year. The number is likely to come around 11% of GDP. This number is the number around which the net financial saving was hovering around. In this chart, you see it as 7.8% in the preceding financial year. But before the pandemic broke out, the number was around 11%, a little less than this. From here, it shooted up to 21%. And in just 2 quarters, it tempered down to 8.2%. This is an estimate. The point is that it shooted up and it tempered down, came approximately to the same level around which it was before the pandemic. The reason is here. The ratio of household deposits to GDP declined from 3% in the December quarter of the preceding financial year from the previous value of 7.7% in just the preceding quarter. The deposit has declined by a huge percentage in just 1 quarter. And according to recent data released by RBI, the currency with public has risen to all-time high of rupees 28 lakh crore. This was in the month of May 2021. Before the pandemic, the currency in circulation with public was hovering around 24 lakh crore. This jump of 4 lakh crore has come because of pandemic. This data is well corroborated with this data that deposit has decreased to around 3% from 7.7% in just the preceding quarter. That means people are taking money out and hence the currency in circulation is increasing. In the beginning of the pandemic, people were on essential expenditure mode. So the deposit was high, the liability was less, the saving was more. Financial net saving increased to around 21%. Over the pandemic, when the financial strain started to take better off the households, the employment situation worsened, the healthcare expenditure increased, and the situation started to normalize. People came back from the essential expenditure mode to discretionary expenditure mode. In many cases, the healthcare expenditure was so high, the condition of employment was so worse that the deposit has to be forcefully withdrawn. And it has been seen that mutual fund, which is an important financial household asset, an important contributor to the household savings. From there, the people have exited. Deposit in the bank also has decreased, resulting in the sharp fall of household deposit. There appeared in the Indian Express an important explain article. There are two reasons why this question has been begged in this article. First of all, this month, the Brent crude price crossed $75. This has been highest since 2018. And secondly, globally, the food prices have been thrown into another orbit. If you look at this graph that compares the global food price index with the consumer food price index India, which is calculated and released by CSO, you will find a huge divergence. Just last month, the global food price index shooted up to around 40%, but the consumer food price index India remained at 5%. There has been consistent rise in the global food price index in last 1 year, but we have not seen any breakout in the price level in the Indian market. It has been seen previously when the global food price was rising, Indian market was catching up. Although this trend is not always true. If you look here in the graph, the global food price index rose to a high level, but Indian market did not catch up with this trend. So will it, won't it? Will food follow fuel? First of all, let's talk about as to why globally the food prices has become exorbitantly high. First of all, as we have discussed in the previous article, when the situation has begun to become normal, when the economies have begun to unlock, then households are shifting from essential spending mode to discretionary spending mode and demand is increasing. Second of all, China has been observed to be importing and stockpiling agriculture goods. They are building strategic reserves in anticipation of fresh corona outbreaks. China being a huge country with huge demand, such kind of stockpiling and building of strategic reserve will obviously affect the demand of agricultural products globally. A third reason adding to the crisis is weather induced production shortfalls in countries like Brazil, Argentina, Ukraine, Thailand, and even in US. You must have been reading about heat waves in US. But in Indian market, in Indian economy, there has been moderation in the domestic food prices. The consumer food price index did not have a breakout. The most important reason for this is good monsoon in last 2 years. That has really helped in increasing the kharif crop production. The second reason is India had strict lockdown norms and that has reduced to lower demands. Most of the hotels, eateries, canteens and the mess either they were shut down or they were working at very low capacity. Because of the lockdown norms, the wedding receptions and the other public functions were very minimal on smaller scale. That also has added to a decreased demand of food. But the factor of monsoon has been very critical, and we are looking forward at this factor at this instant. You can see from this chart that sharp increase in prices has been of edible oil and pulses. In this part of the chart, you'll see that the prices has increased sharply. But the prices of rice, the wheat price has not changed, the milk price has not changed, sugar has not changed, potato has in fact decreased. onion has increased moderately, tomato has not increased. These prices have only moderately increased because these agriculture products, they are produced locally, domestically. The effect of increase in the food prices globally is there on our imported products. But our self-domesticated products, their prices have not increased considerably. So the question that the article raises, will food follow fuel in terms of cost? Well, this is the question to which we will know the answer only over the period of next 1 month. But the answer will surely depend on certain factors. First and foremost, how the international food prices would be doing. If it increases further, then definitely on imported goods the effect will be seen. If the sharp increase mellows down, then that will have a positive effect on our price index. Second, our southwest monsoon. You must be reading a newspaper about western disturbance. You must also be reading a newspaper about halt of the southwest monsoon towards north and northwest India because of low pressure in upper atmosphere, which means that there will be high pressure on ground. To pull up the monsoon, you require a condition of low pressure which is developed generally by western disturbance. On the contrary, low pressure was being developed in the eastern region towards Bihar and Bengal. So monsoon was not getting pulled up towards north and northwest, but that was a temporary phenomena. You must be reading a newspaper about the onset of monsoon in the northern and northwest region of India. How well this is pulled up and what is the condition of southwest monsoon, that will decide what will be the kharif production. And this is going to be an important determinant in deciding the consumer food price index. Presently, the fuel cost, the increase in the cost of the fuel, that is passed 100% to the consumer. If this will be continued or the government will make amendment to the present scheme of things, then the government management of supply chain of food production, for example, hike in the MSPs that have been recently announced, how well the procurement of food grains will be done by the government, these factors are going to decide food prices in the Indian economy. Recently, an Explain article has been published with the title, Can a Drone Attack Be Prevented? This article obviously has been written in the context of tentative drone attack on the Indian Air Force facility in Jammu, which is just around 14 kilometers from the international border. Drone is going to be reality of our time. It's going to be very commonly used. Recognizing this fact, Government of India has come in March this year with Unmanned Aircraft System Rules 2021. This rule is now going to regulate the operation of drones in India. But drones have been very common for military purpose and also for terrorist activities. US have been very commonly using drones in Middle East, especially in Iraq and Syria, to carry out targeted assassinations. There has been incident of terrorist bombing on two key facilities in South Saudi Arabia, allegedly by Yemen's Houthi rebels in 2019. Last year, if you remember, General Qasem Soleimani, who was considered to be the second most powerful man in Iran after the supreme leader, was killed in a US drone attack in Iraq. Previously, the president of Venezuela also has claimed to have survived a drone attack. Be sure, absolutely sure, it's going to be a very important topic from the science and tech portion for your exam, both for prelims and mains. You have to do this very important topic of Unmanned Aircraft System Rules 2021. This has been very elaborately discussed in the DNS. Here we are going to look at some of existing anti-drone systems. One of the anti-drone systems is called as Drone Dome. This has been developed by defense manufacturing company Rafale. Rafale Advanced Defense System, it's an Israeli company. The same company that has made the Iron Dome. Just like Iron Dome, which identifies and intercepts the incoming missile, the Drone Dome detects and intercepts the incoming drones. Like anti-missile system, it will obviously have some collection of radars. It will have radio frequency sensors. It will obviously have some cameras. It will give 360-degree coverage. The purpose of these radar system and radio frequency sensors is to intercept the incoming missile or drones, identify the frequency in which those missile systems or drones are functioning, to communicate with some ground stations, to send back the data collected, the pictures or the videos. They have to operate in some frequency, but that can be intercepted. The term jammers you must have heard in the context of mobile communication. You can send some anti-frequency radiations the radiation that will cancel out the wavelength, the radiation in which those missiles or the drones are working. Over and above all these things, the anti-drone system called as drone dome also has high-powered laser beams. The energy of these laser beams are so high, sometimes around 30 kilovolt, 50 kilovolt. It can put the drone on fire. It can destroy the GPS chips of the drone. It can destroy other parts, the wings, and force the drone to come down. Because it operates with radars and these laser frequencies, these can work 24/7. They are all weather systems. There are interceptor drones called as Drone Hunter. This is being developed by US based Photon Technologies. It also has been tried for US Army. Drone Hunter pursue and capture the hostile drones, and hence the name Drone Hunter. It fires its net gun. It's a spider web based net to capture the target mid-air and tow them down. Sometimes it also has parachutes so that the captured drones is not destroyed on falling down the ground, so that it can be sent for forensic test and the origin, the makers, etc. can be known. Drone Shield is the name of an Australian publicly listed company which makes drone gun. It can be used like normal gun to point and shoot, but it also has radio frequency disruption system along with it. Shooting is done both ways, through the radio frequency disruption radiation and as a gun, as a bullet. There is a system called as Athena, Advanced Test High Energy Asset. They used giant lasers and they literally blast the drone out of the sky. The system has been used for US Army Space and Missile Defense Command. The US Army already has tested the 30 kilowatt version. But the plan is to increase the energy of the laser to much higher level, around 120 kilowatt. If you bring this energy so high, it can not only be used to knock out drones from the sky, it can also be used to knock out missiles. These systems are very safe to be used even in civilian areas because you are not firing any missile. First, the system will be locked with the drone and then these high powered lasers will be emitted. And the blast will be in the air. So ground or ground-based assets cannot become target of these lasers. So they are safe to be used in the civilian areas. There's anti-drone technology called as SAVAGE. SAVAGE stands for Smart Anti-Vehicle Aerial Guided Engagement. It's a kind of missile actually. Just like other anti-missile system, it is based on fire and forget technology. And working just like anti-missile system, it can be fired from surface to the air or air to air. Now the question is, do we have our own anti-drone system? The answer is yes. DRDO has developed anti-drone system indigenously. This announcement has been made by the Ministry of Defense in March this year. But we know very little about the specifications of this anti-drone system developed by DRDO. However, it is in public knowledge that it has been used already. It was used when the US President Donald Trump visited India in 2020. It was then used in the 22-kilometer long road show in Ahmedabad. It was also used in the Red Fort on the occasion of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Independence Day address. From media reports, it has been known that this anti-drone system can detect and jam drones up to 3 kilometers. It also has been known from media reports that now the private companies are also developing anti-drone system in India. Although not officially announced, but the media has reported that Adani Defense Systems and Technologies Limited has demonstrated anti-drone system to the government agencies. The anti-drone system developed by DRDO will be full-fledgedly deployed this year. And maybe then the specifications will be officially made known to us.